Hey guys, welcome to my series on 3 creative strategies using the Ableton Push 2. Today we'll be talking about the second creative strategy, which goes hand in hand with my first creative strategy, and this will be marrying the idea of your musical knowledge with your exploration, and today we'll be talking about contrast. Massive shout out and thank you to Turk Music, who sent me this push to from Turnkey Music in Johannesburg to allow me to make these videos for you all. Turk Technologies are responsible for distributing Ableton products in Africa, and thank you for all the amazing work you guys do. I will put all the details in the description below. Okay, so today we'll be talking about contrast, and following up from last week's video, we're going to be taking this whole idea of exploring and having some fun, but also marrying that with our musical knowledge. And you might have tons of musical knowledge to marry this concept with, in which case that's great. But if you don't, I want to talk to you about this idea of contrast. And contrast we can use all over in music. So I'm going to open a new MIDI track. Default track load. This is exactly the same we did in last week's video. And I'm just going to browse, go to my little taxi sample that you know by now, and we're going to explore the sample, but this time we're going to be a bit more aware of contrasting ideas within the sample. So going into my taxi, into my simpler, and into note mode. I was in session mode. And yeah, here's a nice long sustained section, so let's just keep that one. So I'm going to change my end marker, and we'll keep this as idea number 1. So I'm going to add another track, again a default MIDI track. Okay, my grand piano, browse. So it always just loads a grand piano by default. That's fine. We're just going to load the sample over the grand piano, and that's fine. Okay, so contrasting to a long sustained note, you might want a short note or a percussive note, something with like a fast and sharp attack. There are a whole lot of different ways that you can find contrast. It could be a different pitch. It could still be long and sustained, but be in a lower register. There's a whole lot of creativity in this idea. So let's... I feel like last week we already used that section, so I'm gonna maybe find something else that we haven't used yet. That's quite an interesting little section. And I'm going to put my end marker, and in fact let's put repeat on and do something like that. So this could be a contrasting idea. Another thing that we can actually do is take the whole sample and split it at different points and create a whole drum rack with it to go underneath our sustained sample. So to do that, I'm going to put my start and end markers at the end again, and we're going to go into our mode over here and change it to slicing, and immediately you see the push change color. All of these pads now have different samples in them. And following up from last week, explore them, get familiar with what they sound like and what you can do with them. And if you want to be very thorough, you can actually change all your little transients over here, and you can decide to slice by beat or by region. But for now, we're just going to keep things simple and accept the default. Now I'm going to push convert on the left over here and convert this to a drum rack. And now I've got a little drum rack here. And if you want to see this over your whole push, go to layout, push it twice, and you can see how you're now in 64 pad mode. So without knowing all the samples, I'm just going to start recording and auditioning in between the layers of my drums. So tapping the tempo. And I'll put my metronome on. I think I like that. And now we can just add to that. Maybe something with repeats, a quicker repeat. That's quite interesting. I'm looking for something high, just to contrast all the lower notes. It's probably the highest I'm going to find. It's a little bit soft for me, so I'm going to go into my slice and into the simpler, and under global, change the volume. Now, if you listen to your drum rack or your beat, try and add the beats in maybe areas of silence, or if you really want that contrast between having a beat and silence, then obviously don't add them in the silence, but just whatever you do, take this time to be intentional about it. So there's a lot of movement at the beginning of the clip, so I'm going to add these towards the end of the clip. Cool, and that's it for our drum. So, going back into my device, I'm going to go to a separate track. This was the first long sustained sample we chose. And we're going to do something very basic with that. Let's just record it and add some effects. Go add device. We actually, yes. So audio effects. I'm going to add a frequency shifter so that I can shift the frequency. If you are unfamiliar with the frequency shifter, you can check out my previous video on that. I will link it in the description. But I'm going to go into my frequency shifter and just play around with some of these parameters. Maybe add an LFO. I mean, wow, that's cool. And I'm just going to add some reverb on top of that. So make sure you're adding the device in the right place. So I've got my simpler, I've got my frequency shifter, and I want the reverb after the frequency shifter. So for instance, if your simpler were active and you added a device, you'd be adding it in between. But that's not what we want. So add a device, go to audio effects, go to reverb, and load it. Maybe change the decay time. And just hear that space. Now that's way too loud. So we can go into our mix section over here and change the volume. So if you're not happy with your result or it sounds a little bit weird like this one, don't fret. I want to show you some examples of me doing the same thing and getting completely different audio results. So don't be discouraged, keep exploring, and that way you'll learn and get more comfortable with the instrument. So now that's how you can use the idea of contrast to create this kind of polarity in your music. On the one hand, you've got your sustain section, on the other hand, you've got your beat, and if you now take this a little bit further, you can begin to add a melody or a vocal line on top. So thanks so much for watching, and next week we'll be doing our third creative concept, which is all about preparation. I will see you soon in the next one. Just a shout out to Matt from MALT, Hops and Fiction. He reviews awesome craft beer here in Cape Town. And also to Tatiana from the FLUTE Practice, who teaches y'all how to play the flute and how to improve in your flute playing. They both were responsible for helping me get this film out today.